Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for your hour with Virginia APA. We are here today. My name is Drew Williams with the Berkley Group, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ms. Shana Schaefer, who is an environmental planner with the Berkley Group. And we're here to talk a little bit about stormwater, particularly as it relates to the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're excited to be able to talk to you today. We certainly appreciate your attendance. I would ask that if you do have any questions as we're going through the material today, feel free to submit that through the GoToWebinar function that you have. We will try to hold those to the very end, and as time allows, we've tried to reserve some time on the back end so that we can address any questions or comments that you may have, and hopefully have enough time to keep it within this 1 hour time frame so that we can get you back to work here at 1 o'clock, because I know everybody's excited to get back to work. So we do thank you for joining us today. And just a quick introduction, I think that everyone probably that's joining us right now, I'm sure we have some local government folks that are joining us, and stormwater has certainly been at the forefront of a lot of discussion at the local level in the past few years. Kind of think about if you were probably in 2010 and you were dealing with stormwater, and then you pulled it back to the future and became Marty McFly and fast forwarded to 2015 or 2016, you would probably see that the world has changed significantly, and it's definitely not what it used to be. And so we've noticed that regulations have certainly increased in the last few years, and a lot of that responsibility has been passed down to the local level, where the rubber obviously always meets the road, it seems like. So stormwater regulations have really become somewhat burdensome for a lot of our local partners. It takes a lot of resources to develop and kind of even just maintain the programs that the state has required. And then there are certainly additional infrastructure costs that we'll talk about a little bit later, and how that has certainly impacted local government budgets. And we'd also like to talk to you a little bit today about the regulations themselves and how those apply to your own individual locality, and how we can help you, or at least give you some pointers about implementing a fully compliant stormwater program. Like I said, the changes have been made significantly in the last few years, and so it's been a bit of a moving target, and it will probably continue to be that way as we move forward through the next few years. So some other discussion topics that we'll be talking about, we're going to do kind of a high level, 30,000 foot level, if you will, kind of overview of what stormwater is and kind of why we're here. We'll go down into the weeds a little bit further and start talking about the Virginia Stormwater Management Program itself, and then the local VSMP authority requirements that accompany that. We'll spend some time talking about MS4 localities. MS4 is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, so 1M, 4 S's, and that applies to certain localities, usually based on population. And then we will talk about, kind of wrap it up with some of the changes that we're seeing at the state level and some of the challenges that we're facing there as we move forward with stormwater management in the state of Virginia. So what is stormwater runoff? We probably know that the rain falls from the sky, it hits the ground, some of it's absorbed, what isn't absorbed flows over the ground surface and ends up eventually into our creeks, streams, rivers, lakes, and other waterways that are considered waters of the state, eventually getting to the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, for most of Virginia, not all of it, and then into the ocean. So when the runoff does occur and it cannot be absorbed in the ground, obviously we have stormwater runoff that flows over the land, and as it does so, it picks up a number of things, kind of anything in its way. That includes sediment, sometimes trash, and a variety of pollutants, pet waste, oils, fertilizer, and anything else that may be on the ground, and then carried into the waterways. So this picture right here is kind of to me, is kind of symbolic of why stormwater is important. This picture was taken in the summer of 2012, and some of you may recognize the location. It is James Madison University's Bridgeforth Stadium. That's actually a football stadium there to the right, not a lake. And we had this was during my tenure as the Assistant Director of Public Works in the city of Harrisonburg. And we had a kind of a deluge for about 20 minutes or so, and this is what was the end result. So stormwater is important, as you can see, from a quantity perspective, obviously, and that's one of the things that we try to mitigate. Now, as we all have somewhat seen in the last few years, we have more and more severe events. We are having the 10-year storm more frequently, and we're having the 100-year storm more frequently. And so we can't always design our stormwater facilities to meet the needs of the worst case scenario, but we are trying to do some additional efforts in ensuring that the quality of the water is treated. You know, this, after 20 minutes, ironically, this water, about a half hour later, all of this water was gone, and it had dissipated into the nearby creeks and streams. But obviously with it, it certainly carried all of the stuff that was on the ground. You can see a pickup truck submerged under the water there, and so obviously a lot of sediment, trash, and waste was carried with this water as it exited as it started going towards those creeks and streams. And so it's very important that we are mindful about how we're treating not just the quantity but the quality of the stormwater, and the state of Virginia has certainly made that prevalent in its role in our minds as local government leaders. So why is stormwater important? We get a lot of non-point source pollution, and that is a major contributor to the pollutants in natural waterways along with the Chesapeake Bay. That is one of the things that the recent legislation and really the Chesapeake Bay Act, as it was originally written, was trying to address. And it's the law. None of us really want to go to jail or have to pay penalties and fines, but it's certainly something that we have to adhere to. The Clean Water Act is in effect. The Chesapeake Bay Executive Order 13508 is in effect, and it is a very significant portion of sections in the Code of Virginia. And then, of course, it's the right thing to do. You know, we want to be good stewards of our environment and leave the world a better place for the next generation. It's important that we are taking care of the resources that we have. And development makes a big impact to that, and that is one of the things we will be spending a fair amount of time talking about today. But you can see here in the pre-development versus the post-development world, we have runoff in a pre-development pristine forest type of environment where infiltration and absorption is able to occur much greater, and you do not have a significant runoff that would lead to erosion and sediment degradation. As you can tell in the post-development, we certainly have less opportunity for infiltration and absorption. We have much more impervious areas that are increasing the runoff rates, so we need to work to control that so that we are preventing erosion and degradation of our streams and creeks and waterways. I'm going to turn it over to Shana now, and she's going to discuss a little bit about the Virginia Stormwater Management Program.
Within Virginia, stormwater is regulated under the Virginia Stormwater Management Program, and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality is the lead agency that is responsible for developing the statewide stormwater management control programs, and additionally overseeing the implementation of these individual stormwater programs to ensure that they comply with the Stormwater Management Act and the associated Virginia Stormwater Management Program regulations. And so the overarching goal of this Virginia Stormwater Management Program is focused on ensuring the general health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the Commonwealth, while also seeking to protect both the quality and quantity of the state's waters from the harm that can result from unmanaged stormwater. And the VSMP program manages stormwater during three critical phases of development. First, within the pre-construction phase, this is when stormwater management plans are prepared and reviewed to ensure that they meet the technical criteria for water quality and quantity within the stormwater regulations to protect the state surface waters. Additionally, moving into construction is when the erosion and sediment controls and various pollution prevention practices are implemented and routinely inspected and evaluated to ensure that the construction activity is not discharging pollutants to waterways. Also during the construction phase is when the stormwater management facilities are installed, and this will ensure that after the construction has completed, that the development will not be polluting waterways. Finally, moving into post-construction is when there will be routine maintenance and inspection of the stormwater management facilities to ensure that they continue to provide the water quality and water quantity benefits for which they were designed. Under the VSMP regulations, they set forth water quality and water quantity technical criteria. The water quality criteria establishes that it reduces pollutants carried offsite in stormwater and also sets the threshold for total phosphorus that is allowed to leave in post-construction runoff. And in order to demonstrate compliance with the water quality technical criteria, the applicants are required to use the Virginia runoff reduction method. Additionally, there are criteria for water quantity, and this focuses on ensuring that post-construction runoff peak discharges do not exceed pre-construction peak discharges. And this is to protect the surface waters from channel erosion and also from flooding. And in order to demonstrate compliance with this, stormwater management plans must use the energy balance method and apply the flood protection criterion. The impact of development can be mitigated through environmental site design and the use of best management practices. Environmental site design uses small-scale stormwater management practices, non-structural techniques, and better site planning to mimic the natural runoff characteristics and minimize the impact on water quality and quantity. Environmental site design focuses on promoting conservation of natural features such as drainage patterns, natural or native soil and vegetation. Also minimizes impervious surfaces, and then implements different practices to help slow down runoff and increase infiltration and evapotranspiration. Additionally, if a site does not initially meet the technical criteria in the Virginia Stormwater Management Program regulations, the regulations allow for the use of best management practices, and the standards and specifications for these can be found on the Virginia Stormwater BMP Clearinghouse website. These include the 15 non-proprietary BMPs, such as bioretention facilities, impermeable pavement, and then they also include some of the proprietary BMPs that have been approved by the Department of Environmental Quality. So some localities are required to adopt a VSMP, while other entities and localities may choose whether or not they want to adopt the VSMP program. Localities that must adopt a VSMP include those that are that operate regulated municipal separate storm sewer systems, while non-MS4 localities can choose whether or not they want to adopt a VSMP, as well as state entities, federal entities, and linear projects that are subject to annual standards and specifications. And so this map here shows the local authorities of VSMPs within Virginia, as well as localities that have opted out of administering a VSMP. And so the localities shown here in green include those that operate regulated MS4 programs and are required to adopt a VSMP, as well as those that have chosen to adopt a VSMP. And then for the localities shown in white that have opted out of administering the program, DEQ will serve as the VSMP authority. The VSMP regulations apply to certain land disturbing activities, and these are land disturbing activities that are greater than or equal to 1 acre, part of a larger plan of development or sale that is greater than or equal to 1 acre, greater than or equal to 2,500 square feet within a locality that has been designated as a Chesapeake Bay preservation area, and then finally a more stringent area that is required by a local ordinance. And then under the Stormwater Management Act, localities are allowed to implement more stringent stormwater management ordinances, and this is provided that they are based on comprehensive watershed management studies and findings, or determined by the locality to be necessary to address TMDL requirements, prevent further degradation to water resources, address specific pollution concerns, or protect exceptional state waters. And within Virginia, there are 84 localities that are subject to the Chesapeake Bay Act. This applies to localities within Tidewater, Virginia, and includes most of the localities that are east of I-95. One of the major provisions of the Chesapeake Bay Act and regulations is that it requires localities to regulate land disturbing activities that are greater than or equal to 2,500 square feet under an erosion and sediment control and stormwater management program. And so if a locality is designated as a Chesapeake Bay preservation area, it must still regulate land disturbing activities between 2,500 square feet and 1 acre, even if it has not adopted a VSMP program. So this creates a little bit of a burden for some of the localities in rural Virginia that have opted out of administering a VSMP, because they will still have to perform stormwater management review for activities between 2,500 square feet and 1 acre.
So now we're going to talk just a little bit about administering the VSMP. That is, as Shana had mentioned, there are some localities that have opted out, there are some that have opted in, but we're going to talk a little bit about those that are responsible for administering the VSMP. And beginning really July 1st of 2014, all MS4 localities were required to adopt and administer the VSMP, as Shana had mentioned earlier. Non-MS4 localities could elect to adopt a VSMP or have DEQ administer the program. So we're going to focus just really kind of on those localities that are administering it themselves. The locality's program administrator is responsible for administering the VSMP, which includes compliance with local ordinances, and the state has set forth criteria for what needs to be included in those local ordinances, and that sometimes includes things such as accepting registration statements, plan reviews and what that entails, enforcement procedures, and sets forth criminal and civil penalties for not adhering to the stormwater regulations and codes. The program administrator must also be responsible for permit issuance, construction inspections and enforcement, permit closeout, post-construction inspections, and then retaining the records for those files and those inspections and projects. It's also important to note that VSMP staff have and maintain the required certifications that are required by the state in order to run the VSMP. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those documentation and record retention requirements are, along with the annual reports that need to be submitted to DEQ on a continual basis. So the VSMP authority is required to inspect land disturbing activities during construction, generally for compliance with all of the approved plans. That includes the erosion and sediment control plan, the approved stormwater management plan, and then development, updating, and implementation of the pollution prevention plan, which is kind of a living document in a way, because it does change as the construction and the nature of the construction activities change and evolve with the project. It's also a requirement that that the VSMP authority develop and implement any additional control measures that are required as the result of needing to meet the TMDL requirements, total maximum daily load requirements. It's also important to note that the authority shall establish a program that ensures that stormwater management facilities are being maintained in perpetuity after completion of land disturbing activities. That typically comes in the form of a maintenance agreement between the property owner and the locality, so that it is incumbent upon the property owner to ensure that they are adequately maintaining it, but makes provisions for the locality to have the authority to make any maintenance improvements if it should fail in the future, but it does not place the city or the locality on the hook necessarily for ownership responsibilities and perpetual maintenance. So let's talk just a little bit about the review process. It is a little bit, like some of our review processes are, a little bit lengthy. So the Stormwater Management Plan is submitted by the applicant to the VSMP authority, and we'll just consider that to be a locality for now. So the locality would have 15 days to determine the completeness and then notify the applicant if it is complete. If it is not, then obviously the plan does not move forward and the Stormwater Management Plan must be resubmitted to meet the completeness requirements. Once it is complete and been accepted for review, from that cursory review, the locality or the VSMP authority has 60 days from that notification and then notify the applicant in writing any comments and note any deficiencies that may be in the plan. If it has to be resubmitted, if it doesn't meet those requirements and has to be resubmitted, then the VSMP has 45 days from the date of the resubmission to review and then accordingly respond to the applicant of the nature of any comments to address deficiencies in the plan. Documentation. It's very important that the locality or the VSMP authority have good record keeping to ensure that documents are kept, and there are requirements for that. Project records must be kept for at least 3 years after the state permit is terminated or that the project is completed. The stormwater management facility inspection records need to be kept for at least 5 years from the date of inspection. And then it's always good just to always, certainly for many reasons, keep your construction and as-built record drawings maintained in perpetuity, but that is a requirement of the VSMP, or at least until the facility is removed. So, but it's always certainly good practice, just a good best management practice to retain and keep in a place where, in a good filing system, any construction record drawings for any facility. And then all registration statements submitted for state permit coverage need to be documented and retained for at least 3 years. So there's a few nuances here, and it's just good to remember which ones need to be kept for how long, and then certainly try to ensure that you have a good filing system so that when you win the lottery and you are no longer employed there, whoever steps in behind you can have a fairly good and easily understood method for how things are filed and stored. And so reporting requirements, October 1st is usually kind of the big day to get things to DEQ, and for both MS4s and VSMPs, and that certainly is true here. What the state is looking for from VSMP authorities is to submit information from the previous fiscal year. So for instance, October 1st coming up this year, 2016, they would be looking for information beginning on July 1st of 2015 to June 30th of 2016. And they would be looking for information on new permanent management facilities that have been installed during that time frame. They would like to know the type of facility, where it is located geographically, the coordinates of those, the acres treated, and then the surface waters or karst features into which the facility will discharge. They also would like to know if there was any enforcement actions that had been taken during that fiscal year, and follow-up associated with that, and any number of exceptions that might have been granted by the VSMP authority. And now Shana will talk a little bit about the MS4.
So first off, what exactly is an MS4? MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, and this is the system that is designed for collecting or conveying stormwater that is owned by a public body and is not part of a combined sewer or publicly owned treatment works. And within Virginia, discharges from MS4s are regulated under the Virginia Stormwater Management Act, the Virginia Stormwater Management Program Permit Regulations, and then also the Federal Clean Water Act. MS4 regulations were developed and implemented in 2 phases. The first phase began in the early 1990s, and this required operators of MS4s that served populations greater than 100,000 people per the 1990 decennial census to maintain a permit to discharge stormwater, and these are regulated under individual state stormwater permits. Phase 2 began in 2003, and this applied to operators of small MS4s that were identified as being within urbanized areas by the latest decennial census. And under this classification, small MS4s are required to be regulated by the Virginia General Permit for Discharge of Stormwater from Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, known as the General Permit. The General Permit requires permittees to establish a comprehensive stormwater management plan to reduce pollutants to the maximum extent practicable. And this permit is issued and overseen by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and it focuses primarily upon methodologies to reduce non-point source pollution to the maximum extent practicable. Each MS4 permit lasts for a permit cycle of 5 years. The current permits became effective on July 1st, 2013, and will run through June 30th, 2018, when a new permit is likely to come into effect. In addition to establishing the different components and tasks that must be developed and implemented, the permit also establishes the timeline for developing the MS4 program. There are also some reporting requirements. Permittees must submit a program plan and annual reports to DEQ. The program plan outlines the different best management practices that the locality will implement to meet the permit requirements over the 5-year permit cycle. And this program plan must be evaluated annually and updated as necessary to ensure that the permit requirements are being met. Additionally, the permittee must submit annual reports to DEQ, which are due by October 1st each year. And these annual reports describe the activities that took place during the reporting year, also details the activities that will take place during the following reporting year, and then finally includes an evaluation of the different best management practices that the locality has implemented. The MS4 permit includes requirements for total maximum daily load, or TMDLs, and these apply for the Chesapeake Bay TMDL as well as approved local TMDLs. And so what a TMDL is that it's a pollution budget that quantifies the maximum amount of a pollutant that a body of water can receive while still meeting water quality standards. And so this can be used as a planning tool to help determine what pollutant sources need to be reduced in order to attain water quality standards for a body of water. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency approved the Chesapeake Bay TMDL in 2010, and this TMDL focuses on the pollutants of concern, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. Within Virginia, they've established the Watershed Implementation Plan that allows up to 3 MS4 permit cycles to meet the TMDL reduction requirements. So in this permit cycle, which currently runs from 2013 to 2018, permittees are required to attain a 5% reduction in nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment loads. In the next permit cycle, which will run from 2018 to 2023, permittees must meet an additional anticipated 35% reduction in these loads. And then finally, in the third permit cycle, which will run from 2023 to 2028, permittees must implement practices to meet an additional anticipated 20% reduction. So in total, over these 3 permit cycles, this is going to be a 60% reduction in a locality's nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment loads. So within the MS4 permit, they have the requirement for the permittee to develop an action plan to demonstrate how they will meet the pollutant reduction targets. So they will quantify their current loads and the required reductions, and then also detail the best management practices that they will implement to meet the reduction requirement for that permit cycle. And then additionally, the Phase 3 watershed implementation plan is currently in draft and is expected to come out in 2018, and this may result in some changes to the pollution reduction targets. So we might be seeing a change in the next permit. The MS4 permit also requires a locality to develop action plans for applicable local TMDLs. And so the current permit requires these action plans to be developed if a locality has a waste load allocation for a TMDL that was approved before July 1st, 2013. And so this requirement, the permittee must evaluate the source of the pollutant and then develop and implement an action plan that details the best management practices to meet their assigned waste load allocation. And then finally, they must develop a process for evaluating whether or not their practices they implement will meet their assigned waste load allocations. Finally, the MS4 permit establishes 6 minimum control measures, which must be incorporated into the MS4 program. These include public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, post-construction stormwater management, and then finally pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations. And so under each of these MCMs, there are various tasks and programs that must be implemented, such as public education outreach programs, employee training, and outfall screening. And these have to be implemented into the permittee's MS4 program plan and continuously evaluated to ensure that the locality is meeting the requirements of the MS4 permit.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're facing here in local government. That's kind of what our background is. We work for a number of local governments throughout the Commonwealth, and that's what our background is when we were working for staff. So we're sensitive to the needs and the challenges that local governments are facing when it comes to both the VSMP and the MS4 programs. And we recognize that both are very complex and they are very expensive programs to administer, and with things that are facing us in the future permit cycles, particularly for our MS4 partners and friends, those are some big challenges that we're facing up on the road ahead. So many localities are obviously finding it difficult to create fully compliant stormwater management programs. This is a problem for some localities simply just do not have the resources to develop the programs and then administer them as they should be. There's a lot of stuff going on. We're all very busy, and it's very tough when you're in the trenches and you're trying to put fires out all day working for local government wearing a million different hats, that you're keeping your eye on the ball sometimes as best as we can and trying to make sure we're meeting these requirements and these deadlines that the state has set forth. So it's a resource challenge just from a time standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint, not having the staff positions available for many partners to really dedicate time to focusing on stormwater management programs from the administration perspective. For localities that are opting out of administering a VSMP, one of the challenges that they could potentially be facing is that they're relying on DEQ to perform the necessary reviews, and it kind of takes that local touch out away from the local government a little bit, and it can sometimes be considered a bit of an economic development issue. If you're relying on the state to turn comments around for a site development or a plan, it doesn't maybe always necessarily get done as quickly as it could be done at the local level, realizing that sometimes those resources just simply aren't available at the local level, but it can be sometimes perceived as being not as customer friendly and business development friendly. So there's a challenge there. And then just maintaining the existing stormwater facilities that we have for those of us who are responsible for maintaining the systems, things are not getting any younger, and the infrastructure is not getting any better as the years roll on. And so just trying to keep up with sometimes aging infrastructure is a challenge. But then we have these new TMDL requirements that Shana was just mentioning, where at the end of the third permit cycle, we're going to have to be facing, MS4s are going to be looking at a 60% total reduction in the pollutant loads. That is a major financial commitment for MS4 localities. When I was in Harrisonburg back in probably 2008 timeframe, the Senate Finance Committee had estimated that for just the city of Harrisonburg alone, compliance with those TMDL requirements was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million. Now, I'm sure that number changes. We've obviously gone through additional watershed implementation programs, and the math has changed, but that gives you kind of the magnitude of what localities are having to face, and that's just one locality having to face in terms of what needs to be done to meet TMDL requirements, let alone maintaining the system that they already have. So that definitely, and there's not a whole lot of state money out there. There are certainly some grant programs that are available, and but a lot of them require a fairly significant local match, and they are very competitive as well. So it's very tough to get that kind of funding in place. Many localities are starting to rely more on developing and implementing stormwater utilities, and these act and operate very similarly to the water and sewer enterprise type funds that many localities are used to. But generating new revenue is always sometimes a challenge, and it also can sometimes be politically challenging, as well as just programmatically and administratively challenging. So lots of challenges when it comes to trying to raise revenue to meet these new requirements and goals. And we also know that probably we are not going to have ever a General Assembly session where we find out that the regulations have decreased. I don't think that that's probably something that we'll ever see. So these are obviously going to continue to grow, and more responsibility is going to continue to be most likely placed on the shoulders of local government partners, and that just seems to be the way that things are shaping up for stormwater, as well as many other programs that historically had been funded or financed by the state. So just some challenging times for localities in terms of stormwater, and we are still seeing some state level changes as well, and these will obviously continue to occur as time goes on as well. There was a stakeholder advisory group that was convened in 2015, and it was comprised of 21 or 22 individuals that represented local governments and the development community and environmental groups. And they met a number of times throughout the course of the year, really with the task of looking at how can these different stormwater regulations that overlap but yet are somehow, still kind of standalone, how do they compare when they're side by side? Where are there conflicts? Where are there opportunities for streamlining? And really looking at the Virginia Stormwater Management Act, the Erosion and Sediment Control Law, and the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. Try to kind of set them side by side, see where overlap occurs, but then where some conflicts are, and try to streamline that process. So what came out of the SAG last year was Senate Bill 673 and House Bill 1250, which was passed during this 2016 General Assembly session, and it established the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Program, the VSMP, and non-MS4s can choose to opt in, opt out, or opt in light. So opting in is obviously, some of these are pretty straightforward. You opt in, the locality, non-MS4 locality, is going to administer the VSMP. If you're opting out, you're relying on DEQ to be performing a lot of the technical criteria work that's associated with the VSMP, or what's historically the VSMP, the whole program. But the locality is still responsible for erosion and settlement control obligations, which is a bit of a challenge for our partners that may be opting out. They still have that responsibility. And then there's the opt-in light, which is where it's really a shared responsibility between the state and the locality, or the VSMP authority, where some of the state will provide that technical criteria, but it's up to the locality to kind of administer the program. And that hasn't really gone into effect quite yet. That's coming either July 1st of 2017 or within 30 days of adopting the new regulations. If you're looking at the handout, I believe that it says it's effective July 30th, but that is actually July 1st of 2017. So the State Water Control Board has been directed to work on that, and they're working on developing those regulations and moving forward with that. So we're running a little bit ahead of time, and just want to kind of conclude. Sometimes it's easy to, we spend a lot of time focusing on talking about the regulations and the changes that have been, coming, and the burden that falls on government. It is definitely a challenge, certainly, but we have to kind of remember and take a step back sometimes to really remember how we got here in the first place. And the regulations that we do have, while maybe imperfect and needing to be evolved and moving forward, and we may not always agree on the science behind it, but there is a reason why we are at the place that we are, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have certainly been developing land development and in terms of population growth, in terms of agricultural growth in Virginia for the past 400 years. We have not always done that in the most responsible manner. If you think about some of our waterways that are on the coast, in Fredericksburg, you used to be able to have seagoing ships come up the Rappahannock River. Town of Dumfries was one of the largest ports on the eastern seaboard. The port is now gone because it's been silted up mostly by agricultural practices upstream, and the creek is no longer there. The same with the Rappahannock River. It's silted up, and it's the river is not as deep as it had once been 400, 300, 200 years ago. So we are kind of at the place we are because of where we've been in the past, and we have a responsibility to try to make the quality of life better, to be better stewards of the environment as we're moving forward. So it's sometimes important to remember why we are here and the reasons that we got to where we're at. Chesapeake Bay is certainly starting to make a recovery, but it has got a long way to go as well. And we can all argue that other states maybe need to be doing more to preserve the bay. Virginia is certainly at the bottom of the mouth of the bottom of the bathtub for the Chesapeake Bay, and certainly there are other states that need to be participating, maybe more so than Virginia. But we are kind of in the times we are, and the reality is the environmental reality is what it is. So we are trying to certainly move forward with implementing these rules and regulations as best as we can. It is challenging, certainly from a budgetary perspective, but we need to balance that with the benefits to the citizens and the overall environment, and again, try to be as best stewards of it as we can. So, stormwater management, how can we assist you? We certainly would love an opportunity to come and talk with you if you have some concerns about how to move forward. We do work for a number of local governments where we actually provide assistance on site to help administer MS4 programs, and that's certainly something that we would be interested in talking with folks about if that is of interest and concern. We are certainly glad to learn what you are doing, any thoughts that you may have, and you can certainly contact myself. I'm Drew Williams. My email address is right there, drew@bgllc.net. Also feel free to reach out to Shana. She is at shana@bgllc.net. You can contact us at 560-2202 if you would like to talk, or visit our website at www.bgllc.net. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Local government is our passion, and we do think it is the most important industry in the world because it certainly impacts the lives of just about every citizen almost on a daily basis. So that is definitely our passion, and we'd love to help make local government as best as it can be. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Eldon. I think he had maybe a few comments. We certainly are very happy to be a sponsor of this program, and I think Eldon has just a little plug for next month's session for your hour with Virginia APA.
Thank you, Drew. Before I do that, Shana, do you want to say something about the model environmental ordinance, since we got a couple extra minutes, some of the work that you've been doing for the folks in the George Washington region?
Yeah, so we've been serving as the on-call planner to the George Washington Regional Commission, and one of the projects that we've been assisting them with is to assist Caroline County to develop a model environmental ordinance. And this started out with looking at some of the things that the stakeholder advisory group was looking at, the Stormwater Management Program, the Erosion and Sediment Control Program, and the Chesapeake Bay Program. But then we went a bit beyond what the state had done by also looking to incorporate the requirements of the Floodplain Management Program, as well as requirements that are included within the Construction General Permit. So what we were trying to do was to create a more streamlined way to implement these requirements under a single environmental program in a way that made sense at the local level.
Thanks, Shana. Okay, yes, we appreciate the Berkley group and all they've done to help us get this this series off the ground. Next month, on the fourth Monday of September, which will be the 26th, we'll be hearing from Cityscape, and they're going to be taking a look at the changing world of telecom infrastructure and its impact on local government. And this is quite a dynamic world right now with what's going on with the FCC as well as with Virginia's study, legislative study. So look for in the next e-blast the registration information. The registration site for that one has not been set up. That will be done later this week, and you can get signed up. And again, Drew and the Berkley team, thank you so much for today's presentation.
We're glad to do it. We got you out a little bit early today.